things are moving at such a rapid pace. It is becoming increasingly difficult to keep up, but oh my goodness, it is insane. Everything that's going on with Bitcoin right now, everything that's just going on in the market, in the bond market, in the stock market, but obviously want to be mostly focused on Bitcoin. And so, listen, I've talked about this on this channel before. I'm going to say it again. Bitcoin infinity is the final price. And that's driven by the scam of fiat currency, by the fact that the US dollar is rapidly decreasing in value. And I just want to point out something. I'll share this more at the end of the video, just an illustration of how rapidly this is happening and how aggressive this drop in the purchasing power of the dollar is going to be. And subsequently, a rise in the purchasing power of Bitcoin. It's not just that Bitcoin is going to retain its value over the next years and decades, but it's going to just increase as well. And so, man, where do I even begin when I think about what is going on in the cryptocurrency world, but of course, again, mostly focused on Bitcoin? Well, let me just start with this. Okay, there are currently 15.8 million Bitcoin that are in the wallets of long-term holders, or in other words, 79% of the current circulating supply is being held by people who are diamond handing. Okay, what's the significance of that? Well, that's almost at an all-time high. In early 2024, we got up to 16 million. In late 2024, we got up to 16 million. And then the price rose dramatically and some long-term holders distributed. That is what happens when the price rises dramatically. Pressure is put on long-term holders to realize some profits. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. They transfer to short-term holders. And every peak in Bitcoin's history, starting in 2011, 2013, 2017, 2021, every peak is met by a significant decline in long-term holder holdings until they start to accumulate again. And we're nearing, again, that all-time high in long-term holder holdings. And so what does that mean? Well, I wouldn't be surprised, again, if we got to 16 million, which I think we would get there within a few weeks or maybe at most a couple months, that again, we're going to see a significant decline as price rises and as selling pressure, they feel that selling pressure because of the increase of the price. And we see some short-term holders start to buy into the market again. Right now, they're distributing a little bit. The short-term holders are. But the pressure is rising, but it's rising at such an incredible rate. I mean, we have the spot Bitcoin ETFs. I mean, for example, these last 2 weeks, the spot Bitcoin ETFs have bought between 6 and 18 times the amount of Bitcoin mined every day that the stock market has been open. That is not an insignificant thing. I remember in late 2020 when PayPal and Grayscale were buying 3 times the amount of Bitcoin mined on a daily basis for only a span of a couple months, from like November of 2020 to February of 2021. And we saw Bitcoin's price, not only as a result of that, but that certainly helped. We saw Bitcoin's price go absolutely parabolic. It exploded. And now we're talking about not from all long-term holders, but just from one cohort that is certainly a large cohort, but a 1-year-old, 1.5-year-old cohort, which is the spot Bitcoin ETFs, that they are buying right now, at least within the last 2 weeks, between 6 and 18 times the amount of Bitcoin mined per day. This is not sustainable for Bitcoin to just be at some random price and just steadily climbing. That would be ideal, right? It would be amazing if that's what happened. But there is coming a day soon as we see the selling pressure go away or increase, and as we see the OTC supply, which is rapidly diminishing, run out possibly by July of 2026. And as we see, these are just numbers that I'm pulling off of lots of data sets. As we see potentially what's estimated, the spot Bitcoin ETFs buying even more Bitcoin in 2026 and in 2027 than they bought in 2025 or 2024. if there was ever a time for this to break to the upside, between now and the next Bitcoin halving would be that time. I've said on this channel multiple times before that I am expecting the all-time high for this cycle to be closer to the next halving than to the previous one. That doesn't mean that Bitcoin has peaked for 2025. Not at all. We can certainly go higher short term, but what I'm saying is the high price in 2026 or 2027, in my opinion, I'm convinced is going to go beyond what the peak for 2025 is. And you're actually considering selling your Bitcoin. I mean, we have lots of other companies now acquiring Bitcoin now that it is more regularly available. I mean, we saw GameStop bought something 4,700. That's not an insignificant amount of Bitcoin. We have Metaplanet in Japan buying a lot of Bitcoin. We have Cantor Fitzgerald. Right now, you can trade the CEP ticker on the stock market. We have a lot of potential MicroStrategy impersonators. And oh yeah, MicroStrategy is buying an insane amount of Bitcoin. I believe their number right now is 600,000 Bitcoin in their holdings. And short term is noise, but long term, I mean, the price of Bitcoin is going higher than what you're thinking. I am telling you with absolute confidence that whatever price target you have, the price of Bitcoin will ultimately be higher in many of your lifetimes. All right. For example, the reason why I'm saying that is not necessarily entirely because of Bitcoin, but okay. Did you know there are right now 9 U.S. companies with valuations over $1 trillion? Those 9 U.S. companies are Apple, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Amazon, Tesla, Broadcom, Google, Meta, and Berkshire Hathaway. 9 companies with valuations over $1 trillion. A decade ago, Apple was the largest company in the United States with a valuation of $750 billion. If you rewind to a decade before then, the idea of any company in the United States being worth over $1 trillion was just mind-boggling. There were a lot of people who were saying that in our lifetimes that was not going to happen. And yet here we are. There was no concept of a $1 trillion company in 2005. But here we are at 9 companies with a valuation over $1 trillion. A decade from now, what's that going to be? Maybe it'll be 9 companies with a valuation over $10 trillion. And so should we say then that these companies have just absolutely exploded in value, or should we look at the asset that they are priced in this case, the US dollar, and understand that something is broken in the system and it's getting, the cracks in this dam are getting bigger and bigger, and we're trying to plug holes in the dam, and we're not going to be able to do that forever. And what comes at some point is an acceleration, even more so than what we've seen since COVID, an acceleration in the decline of the purchasing power of the US dollar. The next decade to 15 years, we're going to see the price of gold, even more so than what we've seen recently, rise dramatically. We're going to see the price of Bitcoin rise dramatically. And we're going to see, unfortunately, I think the prices of a lot of commodities rise dramatically. And I wouldn't be surprised if within the next 10 years, this is a big deal in the United States, that gas prices would be something like $8 to $10, honestly. That might be what's ahead of us, and it's not because gas is getting expensive. It's because the US dollar priced in gasoline and in oil is declining. And I mean, if you look at these charts, look at Costco's chart. It's just going up in a straight line. That's not because Costco is this amazing company. I mean, Costco is a wonderful company, but because the US dollar is broken. And so there are valuations that are coming in the future for Bitcoin, which is currently a little over $2 trillion market cap. And there are valuations coming in the future for gold, which is currently over a $20 trillion market cap. I hope I said trillion for Bitcoin, 2 trillion for Bitcoin, 20 trillion for gold. And there are going to be days when Bitcoin is $10 trillion, $20 trillion. And that seems not within range right now, but that day is coming soon. And there's going to be a day, this is a number that I would say is a much bigger number than what I can imagine right now, but there's a day when Bitcoin is going to be $100 trillion market cap. If you're wondering what price that is, that's, I believe, $5 million. I absolutely believe that we're going to see a $5 million Bitcoin, and that's going to happen in most of our lifetimes. And it's weird. it's not entirely because I'm this much of a believer of Bitcoin, and I'm a huge believer in Bitcoin, but it's more so just the trajectory that we are on with the US dollar. Guys, you've got to flee from these fiat currencies. Some of them are less of a scam than others. The Swiss franc is one of the least scammy fiat currencies I know, but it's a huge scam still. And the ultimate price for these fiat currencies, for this fiat currency experiment that we've been in since 1971, is zero. And so if you don't like Bitcoin, fine, but you've got to have something hard. You got to have a hard asset that will at least retain its value priced in the dollar, or priced in everything else, I should say, excuse me. And there's a lot of options, but for me, Bitcoin is a clear front runner of that. And gold is probably number 2. And of course, lots of stocks, but I think we're entering a 10 to 15 year period where gold is going to outperform the stock market. So anyway, super bullish on Bitcoin, super bearish on the dollar. And that is all I have for today. Hope you have a wonderful day and wonderful rest of your week. I will see you in another video. Peace.